This is Pastor Tim coming to you again from Lomita and Bend United Methodist Churches in Central Texas, an old-fashioned Methodist circuit. We've been talking about the Bible and telling kind of a broad overall view of the Bible. Now we're getting down to some of the stories of the Bible because I think they're critical to understand both our faith and us as human beings. To understand how God relates to us even more than anything else. So we've been telling stories. And the story that we're going to talk about today is Adam and Eve. God created Adam and Eve. It says that God took a rib from Adam and created woman so it would be of the same substance, that they would be kindred spirits. The Jewish wisdom literature says that God didn't take a bone out of the top of his head so the woman would not be over him, and he didn't take a bone from the foot of Adam so that the woman would be under him. He took one from the side so they would be partners in life. But they were living in the garden. They had work to do. It was not a carefree existence. They had to till the land. They had to take care of and husband the animals and the plants and maintain the garden, and they had a direct connection to God. Now, God told them that there were only two prohibitions, that they couldn't touch the tree of life, and they couldn't touch the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But that was so tempting to Adam and Eve. As every human being, whenever you're told you can't do something, that's exactly what you want to do. But it was symbolic of more than just a human desire to resist the parent. It was a desire to be God, because they figured that with the knowledge of good and evil, they would then be able to have the control of what is good and evil. And ever since then, we've been trying to decide what's good and what's evil and declare it. And sometimes declaring that which is evil to be good, and that which is good, we declare it to be evil. So we've messed it up ever since. But that was the tree that God said was in the center of the garden that they could not eat because it would kill them, not physically kill them, but spiritually, and their connection with each other and with God, their naiveness, their easy conversations with God would be at an end. So God was doing it for their own benefit. Then the serpent came. The serpent sometimes described as the devil, but it just says in Genesis that it was more clever than the other animals. And that's when the snakes apparently spoke. Nobody's surprised when the snake starts speaking. And he begins to question God. Ask Eve, what did God really say? To say, question what God really meant. And she added said, don't eat of it, or don't even touch it, or you'll die. And the snake, rightly so, said, you're not going to die. Physically, you're not going to die. And then she begins to look at the fruit, and the snake disappears from the story in that respect, because she doesn't need any more persuasion. She looks at it and said, it's good for your health. Fruit's always good for your body. It make you smarter. It's always good to have an education. She begins to persuade herself that it's good to have this fruit. So she breaks of it and gives it to Adam, who's standing right there with her, and right there with in that decision. And then they discover that they're naked. Now it's not some new information for them. They've been seeing each other all since their creation, but their nakedness is a vulnerability. They knew they were vulnerable to being hurt by one another, and to be absent from God. So they knew they were vulnerable, and so they tried to cover up, and they covered up with fig leaves. If you ever touched a fig leaf, that is not very pleasant clothing. And God comes and says, Adam and Eve, where are you? As if God needs to a device to help find Adam and Eve because he loses track of them. But he says, "What have you done?" And then the woman says, "Well, it's the man. You know, the man says it's a woman's fault because she gave me the apple." Well, you know, they said, in fact, he says, "The woman that you gave me." So in essence, he's saying it's God's fault. And the woman says, "No, it wasn't my fault. It was the snake's fault." The blame game has already started early in our history, and then God says you have to leave. You can't live in this world, this pleasant environment anymore, because you're already self-centered, and selfishness and your desire to do without God, to be God, to control everything has gotten the best of you. So they had to go out in the world. But God first gave them a gift. He made the animal skins and put it on them and sent them out into the world. And thus begins our human history. But that's a way of talking about who we are, where we started, and where we're trying to get back to, basically. And all the difficulties we have in our life can be traced back to those moments of selfishness and the moments of desire to control, to be in charge. And that's where we ended up. I hope this helps. I'll see you next time.